Justin, so it's not surprising to me, knowing Michigan's reputation, that they would take a conservative approach to NIL. I don't think that surprises anyone. But I will note that this doesn't seem like a big deal now, but this was what, late 80s, early 90s, that Michigan was the first school to have a sports program commit to and sign a large contract with an apparel company, which at the time that was groundbreaking. So they were ahead of the curve there, way in front of everybody else. And also what strikes me is that, again, Michigan taking a very principled approach. So the critics might say they're elitist, they're arrogant, they're stubborn, they're unaware, they're unwilling to
stop me
get
if
with
you've
the
heard
program.
this before, right?
I think there's some element of truth depending on the topic. I'm not just focusing, but there's also I have to also admire the principled approach because academics are first, and it's a high-ranked institution, and I think much of it's authentic, principled approach to keeping things in order the way it's supposed to be, and the way all of this started as nothing but academics, and you played football on the side. So let's understand why we're here and why these institutions and all the buildings on campus exist. So the reason I bring that up is it'll be interesting to see if this does play out throughout National Signing Day, and if Michigan's able to catapult itself based on a lot of the factors that you just outlined to its typical 8 to 12 to 15 recruiting class, versus if it's the 32nd ranked recruiting class, whether that's going to slap them in the face and say, we need to change, we need to do something. Who knows?
Yeah, and I've had some conversations with multiple people within the program, within the athletics department, that type of thing. Some people have said, like, honestly, Michigan trailing and struggling in recruiting right now might be the best thing that happens to Michigan long term, because it's going to make these boosters say, oh crap, we need to do something. Or it's going to make Coach Harbaugh or the athletic director or whoever it is say, wait a minute, we're really struggling, we need to make a significant change in how we do things. If Michigan was still at like that 15 spot or something, they'd be like, all right, we're doing okay, even though they're missing out on some big guys. So I think the negative media around where they're at right now is definitely going to help Michigan in the long term. But for the short term, it's obviously they're going to struggle for right now. Now, I think that it's going to be interesting how it all plays out, because Michigan for sure is that, like, I know some of the boosters and the regents at Michigan, they have this ideology that we're Michigan. Guys shouldn't have to be paid to come here. We're good enough. Like that type of thinking. And that type of thinking was great in the 80s, was great in the 90s, kind of in the early 2000s. And then Michigan's just been riding off of like the brand really barely hanging on for the last 20 years, up until they, just made a big splash this past year. Well, now for sure with NIL, you have to be forward thinking. You have to be proactive. You can't just ride. Texas A&M and Texas aren't just saying, we're Texas, come here. They're saying, here's the money. Here's how you're going to get compensated, that type of thing. So it'll be interesting to be how it plays out. But I know that there are people within the department, it's a little bit of a power struggle and different ideologies and thinking. There are some people on the side of, yes, we need change. And there are some people on the side of, we're Michigan, we shouldn't have to do that. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out for sure.
So, Justin, while I mentioned, I'm not surprised with Michigan's conservative approach. They did announce a collective early in the year, the Victors, and then later was this collaboration that involves the brand name with the Brander Group and how they were going to capitalize on the brand that we've already addressed and the prominence of the brand. So I thought at that point, Michigan's on top of this. They're along with everyone else at the very highest levels, and they're going to be fine.
Yeah, and I thought the exact same. And I thought, all right, maybe they're a little bit slow to the punch, but as soon as now it's going, it'll go. And it just still feels like it's a little bit slow moving. And I think, to be honest with you, one of the big reasons of that is they have really smart and great boosters that are involved in these collectives, but Stephen Ross is not a part of it. You know, some of their higher profile, whereas like a Phil Knight at Oregon is like leading it, you know, essentially. They need that big billionaire guy. Even at Michigan State, it's Matt Ishbia, it's Dan Gilbert. You know, it's those big billionaires that are saying, "Hey, I'm at the forefront of this. What do you need? I'll write the check." And Michigan just doesn't seem to have that guy or girl right now. It has a great group for sure, but it feels like it needs that next level type of person. The other thing I think that really makes an impact on that is I know the university and the team are not supposed to technically be involved in all this, but you see a video come out of Jimbo Fisher just straight up saying, "Hey, here's these guys that are going to pay you." And Michigan, I still think, is conservative because they don't want to toe that line or cross that line of what's illegal, what's not illegal. Jimbo doesn't care, you know, and he's like, until somebody tells me to stop doing this, I'm going to do it. Well, Michigan, I think if they want to make that leap, Jim Harbaugh, Warde Manuel do have to make some better efforts into working with these collectives and trying to call on boosters, make sure that their recruits are being taken care of here, and making sure everyone's on the same page. How are we going to keep this thing rolling? Because ultimately, what you saw in 2021, you thought when we got on here after Michigan beat Ohio State, after Michigan played in the college football playoff, won a Big Ten championship, you and I and everybody else thought this is the turning point for Jim Harbaugh. This is when they really make a run here. They get a top 5 recruiting class and they go. Now you take a step back and it's like, is 2021 going to be the only year for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan?
And as you mentioned with the Jimbo Fisher scenario and that being that blatant and upfront about it. So the way this is supposed to work, based on my understanding, is that, yes, there is NIL opportunities at all these schools, but it is not supposed to be an inducement, not a specific inducement to say, you come here, we've got X, Y, and Z collective. It's going to pay you $1.4 million. There you go. It's just that we have these contacts. We have these resources. I'm the head coach, but I deal with football and building relationships. I'm pointing you to compliance, work with them. They'll deal with the collective, keep track of the accounting, and you have all sorts of great opportunities, but we don't really know what those are, what the specific numbers are. Deal with them and deal with the collective. I'm out of it. And I'll help you as much as possible, but there you go. Right.
That's exactly how Michigan is doing it, which is the legal and correct way that this was all planned out. Here's the problem. Nobody else is doing it that way, and nobody else is telling other programs that they can't do it. The NCAA is like, not our problem, you know, essentially. So the only way that this evens out and Michigan comes out on top is if there's some federal regulations that come in, the IRS comes into these collectives, which is very, very possible because all these collectives are like, yeah, we're a nonprofit. All right, so what's your charity exactly? Who are you benefiting? Oh, wait a minute. The IRS could come in and say, that's not really how nonprofit charities work. So, but ultimately, Michigan is doing it the correct way. They're doing it exactly how the law and how NIL was built to do it. The issue is, I think Michigan does have to conform at some point to like not just doing things the right way and how the rest of the entire country is doing things as well. Because you've seen the SEC. I mean, shit, Mark, the SEC has been doing this for how many years? You know, I think we can all say that, right? And so it's one of those things where does Michigan want to stay on its high horse and stay on that side of being safe and conservative and doing the right thing? Or do you want to be competitive in this space? And I think you have to toe the line if you do want to be competitive in this space.